Emotions are like waves, powerful, ever-changing, and often beyond our control. But according to Stoic philosophy, while we may not control what we feel in the moment, we can control how we respond. For the Stoics, emotional mastery wasn't about suppressing feelings or pretending to be a robot. It was about creating space between stimulus and reaction. In that space, they believed, lies our true power. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, once reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He didn't seek to erase his emotions, but to understand them, question them, and steer them toward virtue. That's why emotional control in the Stoic sense isn't cold. It's calm. It's about staying anchored when the world wants you to drift. And this calmness isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, step by step, through small daily habits. 1. Start your day with full awareness. In a world that often jolts us awake with notifications, emails, and endless obligations, beginning the day with full awareness is not just an act of self-care, it's an act of rebellion against chaos. The Stoics believed that the quality of your day begins not with your to-do list, but with your state of mind. For Marcus Aurelius, each morning was a chance to remind himself of what life may throw at him, and more importantly, how he should respond to it. Not emotionally, but with reason and intention. To practice this habit, don't rush to grab your phone. Instead, take 5 minutes to breathe deeply, feel your body waking up, and reflect. Ask yourself, what do I want to bring into the world today? Peace? Patience? Clarity? This moment of grounded awareness sets a tone of calm rather than panic. It teaches you to lead your emotions, not be led by them. Awareness isn't just about mental alertness. It's about emotional preparation. It's about knowing that difficulties will come and that you have a choice in how to meet them. When you start your day grounded, you'll be less reactive to annoyances and better equipped to notice when your emotions are trying to hijack your thinking. Stoicism teaches that our emotions are often reactions to our judgments, not events themselves. By pausing in the morning and aligning with your values and purpose, you strengthen your ability to meet life's turbulence with a steady heart. This awareness, built in the quiet of the morning, becomes a shield throughout the day. Some people meditate, others journal. Even a silent cup of tea enjoyed with presence can become a sacred ritual of readiness. The key is not the method, it's the mindfulness behind it. Your morning becomes a quiet declaration. I will not be swept away today. It's simple, yes, but incredibly powerful. Because the first few moments of your day are not just minutes on a clock. They are the seed of your emotional life, planted in stillness and grown in intention. Reflection. Before the world tells you who to be, tell yourself. Before emotions rise, return to yourself. In that quiet morning moment, you are not reacting, you are choosing. And in that choice, you reclaim your day. 2. Choose what deserves agreement and what must be rejected. Every day, we're exposed to a flood of opinions, invitations, expectations, and subtle manipulations. Some ask for our time, some demand our loyalty. Others come disguised as compliments, criticism, or cultural norms. If we don't choose consciously what to agree with and what to reject, we risk becoming puppets pulled by every passing influence. Stoicism offers a powerful tool for emotional control, assent. In Stoic philosophy, not every impression, what we see, hear, or feel is to be believed or accepted. Epictetus emphasized that we are not disturbed by events, but by the opinions we form about them. That power lies in our ability to say yes or no in the space between stimulus and response. Imagine someone criticizes you harshly. Your first impulse may be to feel hurt or defensive, but Stoicism invites you to pause and ask, is this worth agreeing with? Is this a truth I must carry? Or a projection I can let go? When you sharpen this ability, you start filtering what enters your emotional world. Likewise, flattery can be just as dangerous as insults. It can trick us into pride, arrogance, or false dependence. The wise person doesn't blindly agree with praise any more than with blame. They examine both. They ask, is this aligned with my values? Does this help or hinder my integrity? Choosing where to place your agreement also applies to internal thoughts. Not every voice in your head is true. Some are echoes of fear, others of old conditioning. A Stoic does not allow every thought to become law. They interrogate their mind like a wise gatekeeper. This discipline is not about being rigid or skeptical of everything. It's about mental responsibility. When you learn to say, this is not worth my peace, or this thought does not serve me, you start to build a resilient inner world. Most people react because they feel they have no choice. But the Stoic knows that choice is always there. To agree is to give power. To reject is to protect peace. Reflection. Not everything that enters your mind deserves a home. Not every voice deserves a reply. Your emotional stability is shaped not just by what happens, but by what you allow yourself to believe. In the end, mastery begins with discernment. Learn to pause, and in that pause, protect your peace. 3. Delay your reaction. Calm yourself first. In a world addicted to speed and impulsiveness, the idea of pausing before reacting almost feels revolutionary. Social media encourages immediate replies. Arguments are won by quick retorts, and silence is often misunderstood as weakness. But the Stoics understood something deeper. True strength lies in restraint, not reaction. When something provokes us, an insult, an unexpected obstacle, or a piece of bad news, our first instinct is rarely the wisest. We feel the rush of adrenaline, the tightness in our chest, the heat of emotion rising. At that moment, we are not thinking clearly. We are reacting from survival, not reason. The Stoics, especially Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, taught that emotions are not the problem. It's our unquestioned submission to them that causes suffering. Marcus often reminded himself in his journal that the mind has the power to remain unmoved by chaos. But how? Through delayed reaction. Delaying your response gives your rational mind time to return to the driver's seat. It allows the emotional wave to pass before you speak, act, or decide. This pause, just a few seconds, a deep breath, a walk around the block, can mean the difference between damaging a relationship and deepening it, between regret and wisdom. When we react instantly, we often speak from ego, fear, or anger. These responses might feel satisfying in the moment, but they rarely lead to long-term peace. In contrast, when you calm yourself first, you respond from clarity, intention, and maturity. You choose words that heal instead of harm. You take actions that build rather than destroy. This isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about honoring it without letting it rule you. It's about learning to say to yourself, not yet. Let me understand what I feel before I express it. Over time, this habit strengthens your emotional intelligence. You become someone others can trust. Not because you're perfect, but because you're steady. Imagine how much unnecessary conflict, stress, and regret could be avoided if people simply waited a few moments before replying to an angry message, before snapping in traffic, or before making assumptions. In this simple act of waiting, Stoicism offers you a superpower: emotional sovereignty. Reflection. Your first impulse is not your final answer. The space between emotion and action is where wisdom lives. Delay not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to choose peace over pride. In that calm space, you find the power to shape your response and your life. 4. Write down your feelings every night. In the stillness of the night, when the world slows and distractions fade, we are finally left alone with our thoughts. And yet, this is the moment many of us avoid. We scroll, binge watch, or collapse into sleep, carrying unresolved emotions from the day like an invisible weight. The Stoics, however, practiced a deeply healing habit, nightly journaling, not as a diary of events, but as a ritual of reflection and emotional clarity. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of Rome, wrote not for an audience but for himself. His meditations were never meant to be published. They were his way of confronting the day's challenges, checking his impulses, and strengthening his soul. This ancient act of journaling isn't about being poetic or perfect. It's about being honest. Honest with what you felt, where you failed, what tested your values, and what you wish to improve. Writing down your feelings at night gives your mind permission to unload without judgment. Instead of bottling emotions or allowing them to fester into stress and resentment, you lay them down on paper. This simple act externalizes your inner chaos and allows you to see your thoughts with more clarity. Often, the things that felt overwhelming shrink in size once written out. Emotions that felt tangled begin to make sense. The Stoics believed in examining one's day as a form of moral exercise. Seneca advised reflecting, "What bad habit did I conquer today? What temptation did I resist? In what respect am I better?" It wasn't about shame or perfection. It was about growth. Nightly journaling lets you track the arc of your personal progress, revealing patterns you might otherwise miss. Over time, this habit becomes a mirror to your inner world. You'll begin to see not only what bothers you, but also what brings you joy, peace, and meaning. You'll learn which situations consistently trigger you and which people uplift you. You'll discover your core values, not by declaration, but by noticing how your emotions align or clash with your actions. Best of all, journaling each night prepares your mind for restful sleep. It tells your nervous system, you are heard, you are seen, you can rest now. Instead of spiraling into late-night overthinking, you've created a safe space for your emotions to land. Reflection. Your emotions deserve more than suppression or distraction. They deserve understanding. In the quiet of the night, your journal becomes your sanctuary. Write not to impress, but to express. In doing so, you don't just process your day, you prepare your soul for a wiser tomorrow. 5. Learn to say no calmly. In a world that constantly asks for more time, more attention, more energy, the ability to say no becomes not just a personal boundary but a survival skill. And yet, for many people, saying no feels like a betrayal of kindness, of opportunity, of expectations. The Stoics, however, saw it differently. To say no with calm conviction is to protect the integrity of your mind and the direction of your life. Seneca once warned that people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful. What he meant is that we often guard our money or possessions, but allow others to freely consume our most limited resource, time. Learning to say no is about reclaiming that time, not with harshness, but with quiet strength. Saying no does not make you selfish. In fact, it often makes you clearer, healthier, and more present for the things that truly matter. When you stretch yourself too thin, chasing approval or trying to avoid discomfort, you dilute your focus and burn out your inner peace. The Stoics believe that peace of mind is worth more than popularity or fitting in. And sometimes, keeping your peace means turning away from unnecessary obligations. The key is to say no without anger, guilt, or explanation. A calm no comes from inner clarity. You don't owe people elaborate justifications for guarding your well-being. You are allowed to choose rest over busyness, depth over distraction, and intention over impulse. The more you practice this, the more you'll realize that most people don't need a perfect reason. They just need you to be honest. When you say yes to everything, you eventually start saying no to yourself. Your passions, your mental health, your personal values, they all get pushed aside for the sake of keeping others comfortable. But Stoicism teaches us that self-respect grows in proportion to the choices we make deliberately, not reactively. Learning to say no with calmness is one of the purest forms of self-mastery. It signals that you are no longer governed by fear of rejection, guilt, or being misunderstood. Instead, you are led by purpose, not pressure. Reflection. Every time you say no with grace, you say yes to something deeper. Your clarity, your boundaries, your life lived on purpose. The goal is not to push people away, but to stay aligned with what really matters. Practice the courage to decline without defensiveness, and you'll find that true respect, both from others and from yourself, often begins with a calm, confident no. 6. Recognize patterns that trigger negative emotions. One of the most underrated forms of wisdom is self-awareness, especially when it comes to our emotional patterns. So many of us go through life reacting instead of responding, getting caught in loops of anger, anxiety, frustration, or jealousy without understanding where those emotions come from. The Stoics believed that clarity is power, and that includes the clarity to recognize what upsets you and why. Epictetus said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things." In other words, it's not the event that causes our emotional pain, it's our interpretation of the event. But how can we improve our interpretations if we never examine our emotional patterns in the first place? Start by observing recurring moments that drain you emotionally. Is it a particular comment from a colleague? A certain time of day when your mind spirals into self-doubt? Is it the pressure to be perfect? Or the feeling of being ignored? Notice not just the situations, but your internal narrative in those moments. What story are you telling yourself? That you're not good enough? That people are always out to get you? That failure means worthlessness? When you bring attention to these emotional triggers, not to suppress them, but to understand them, you gain control over your response. And this control is central to Stoic practice. The wise Stoic does not avoid discomfort, but seeks to understand its root. They don't blindly blame others for their suffering, but instead look inward to study the reaction. This doesn't mean you should tolerate harmful behavior. Rather, it means you should seek to respond with intention, not impulse. Another benefit of tracking emotional triggers is that it creates space between stimulus and response. It teaches you to pause. In that pause, clarity is born. That's where your freedom lives. The ability to choose how you'll think, feel, and act. And over time, what once triggered you begins to lose its grip. You rise above it, not by force, but through awareness and reflection. The goal is not to become numb to emotion. The goal is to no longer be ruled by unexamined emotion. Once you recognize your patterns, you gain the power to reshape them. You can't grow out of what you won't confront. But once you do confront it, you no longer become a prisoner of your past reactions. Reflection. Emotions are signals, not dictators. When you learn to recognize what consistently stirs your frustration or sorrow, you begin to take back the wheel of your inner life. Don't run from your emotional triggers, study them. Each pattern you uncover is an invitation to grow, a mirror showing you where freedom is still possible. True mastery begins not with control, but with understanding. 7. Let go of the obsession with outcomes. In a world driven by metrics, likes, promotions, and applause, it's incredibly easy to measure our worth by results. We're taught from an early age to chase after success and avoid failure at all costs. While ambition can drive progress, an unhealthy obsession with outcomes can poison our peace of mind and detach us from the deeper meaning of our actions. The Stoics offer a different way, a liberating perspective rooted in timeless wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This quote captures the essence of why focusing on outcomes is dangerous, because results are almost always outside our complete control. You can study hard and still fail the test. You can put your heart into a project and still be overlooked. You can love someone with everything you have and still be left behind. The world doesn't always reward effort with success, and the Stoics urge us to make peace with that fact. When you obsess over outcomes, you create a fragile emotional system where your sense of self-worth rises and falls with each success or failure. You become a slave to external validation, vulnerable to forces beyond your influence. Instead of living from the inside out, you start living from the outside in. The Stoic path is different. It says, focus on what you can control, your effort, your attitude, your integrity, and release what you can't. This doesn't mean you become apathetic or indifferent. On the contrary, you give your best precisely because it is a reflection of your character, not because it guarantees a specific result. Your focus shifts from achievement to alignment. Alignment with your values, virtues, and highest self. Imagine the freedom of doing your work well, loving deeply, showing up fully, without being crushed if things don't go your way. Imagine no longer being paralyzed by fear of failure or addicted to the high of applause. You simply do the right thing because it is the right thing, and that is enough. Letting go of results doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring differently, with more peace, less pressure, and greater clarity. It is in this detachment from outcome that true excellence is born, because you become more grounded, more present, and more free. Reflection. The Stoics teach us that we are not entitled to outcomes, only to our honest effort. When we obsess over results, we hand over our happiness to things we cannot control. But when we pour ourselves into the process and let go of how the world responds, we find a deeper kind of success, the kind that cannot be taken away. Your peace does not lie in the trophy or the applause. It lies in knowing that you lived with purpose and gave your best, no matter what came back. 8. Avoid speaking when emotions are running high. There's a reason why some of our deepest regrets are tied to words spoken in anger, frustration, or fear. Emotions are powerful forces. They can cloud judgment, distort reality, and push us to say things we don't truly mean. And once words are spoken, they cannot be unspoken. They carry weight, and often they wound more deeply than we intended. The Stoics, ever wise in the art of emotional discipline, warned against impulsive speech driven by uncontrolled emotions. Seneca, one of the most revered Stoic philosophers, wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." This simple advice contains profound wisdom. When emotions rise, our ability to reason often falls. We react rather than respond, and reactions made in heat often leave behind the ashes of broken relationships, regret, and misunderstanding. Speaking in the middle of emotional storms is like sailing through violent waters without a compass. You may think you're headed in the right direction, but chances are you're just being tossed around by the waves. By holding back, by waiting for the storm to settle, you give yourself space to choose a response that reflects your values instead of your emotional impulses. This habit of silence, not out of weakness, but out of strength, is a pillar of Stoic emotional control. It's not about bottling up your feelings or pretending you're unaffected. It's about honoring the clarity that comes with time. When you pause before speaking, especially when you're emotionally charged, you're giving yourself the gift of perspective. You might realize the argument isn't worth it, or that what you wanted to say could be rephrased in a way that builds bridges, not burns them. And here's the truth. Most conflicts escalate not because of the situation itself, but because of how we react to it. Imagine how many arguments could be avoided, how many relationships preserved, if we simply allowed emotions to cool before engaging in conversation. When your heart is racing, when your jaw is clenched, when your voice trembles, that is not the time to speak. That is the time to be silent and breathe. By choosing not to speak when you're upset, you are not suppressing your emotions. You are channeling them wisely. You are protecting your peace, your dignity, and the respect between you and the other person. And when the time comes to speak, you do so with clarity, calm, and compassion. Reflection. Words can be tools or weapons. It depends on when and how they're used. When emotions run high, let silence be your sanctuary. Wait until the storm inside you has passed before engaging with the world outside. In that space between feeling and speaking lies your greatest power. The ability to choose peace over conflict, understanding over impulse, and wisdom over regret. Speak not to win, but to heal. And let your silence be stronger than your rage. 9. Use your breath as an anchor. In the chaos of daily life, amidst pressure, confrontation, and emotional overload, we often forget that we carry within us one of the most powerful tools for calm and clarity. Our breath. It's so simple, so constant, that we overlook it. But for the Stoics and for countless philosophies that champion self-mastery, conscious breathing is not just a biological act. It's a bridge between emotion and awareness, reaction and reflection. When Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, he often returned to the rhythm of nature, reminding himself that serenity could be found in simplicity. And what could be simpler, yet more essential, than the breath? Your breathing reflects your internal state. When you're anxious, it becomes shallow. When you're calm, it slows and deepens. The beauty is that it works in both directions. Not only does emotion affect breath, but breath can influence emotion. By learning to control your breathing, you gain a tool to regulate your emotional landscape. Think about the last time you were overwhelmed. Maybe you were flooded with anger, stress, or fear. In those moments, it feels like you're being swept away by a current too strong to resist. That's when your breath becomes your anchor. Deliberate, slow breathing tells your nervous system, I am safe. It resets your internal state. It re-engages your rational mind. It slows down the racing thoughts and lowers the physiological signals of panic. Many Stoics train themselves to respond to adversity, not by clenching fists or raising voices, but by inhaling deeply, finding a pause in the storm. They didn't have modern science, but they understood instinctively that a single breath can create a space between impulse and action. That space is where choice lives. And choice is the foundation of Stoic wisdom. Practicing breath awareness doesn't require special tools or a quiet mountain retreat. It's available to you in traffic, during an argument, before a presentation, or when sadness creeps in uninvited. Try this. Take 3 deep breaths. In through the nose, hold, out through the mouth. Do it now. Feel the shift? Even subtle awareness of your breath pulls you back into the present moment and out of the emotional echo chamber of your thoughts. Over time, anchoring your emotions with breath becomes second nature. You begin to meet challenges with steadiness instead of panic. You become the person who remains composed when others unravel. You train yourself to be a calming presence, not just for yourself, but for those around you. Reflection. Your breath is more than air. It's a reminder that you are in control not of the world, but of your response to it. When emotions surge, when the mind spirals, return to the breath. It's always there, quiet, patient, and unwavering. In that rhythm, find your balance. In that pause, find your strength. When in doubt, breathe hand, let that breath guide you back to yourself. 10. Build a positive inner dialogue. What you repeatedly say to yourself becomes the atmosphere in which your thoughts live. For many, that internal space is filled with judgment, harsh comparisons, regret, and anxiety. And yet, most people don't realize that they have the power to change the tone of this inner voice, to turn it into a source of strength rather than sabotage. In the Stoic tradition, self-mastery doesn't only mean controlling your actions. It also means tending to your thoughts, especially the ones you whisper to yourself in silence. Stoics like Epictetus emphasize the power of perception, and perception is largely shaped by the story we tell ourselves. If you constantly repeat phrases like, "I'm not good enough," "This always happens to me," or "I'm such a failure," then your mind will begin to see life through that lens, even if it's false. But if you choose different words, such as, "I can learn from this," "This is tough, but I'm capable," or "I'm doing the best I can today," your perception starts to shift. And so does your emotional state. Building a positive inner dialogue is not about blind optimism or lying to yourself. It's about speaking to yourself like you would to a friend, with kindness, understanding, and encouragement, especially during moments of failure or uncertainty. You wouldn't call a friend stupid for making a mistake. You wouldn't tell them they're worthless for struggling. So why do you say it to yourself? The Stoics believed in practicing logos, reason, order, and clarity. Negative self-talk disrupts this clarity by clouding your mind with emotional noise. A positive inner dialogue clears space for reason to lead. It helps you pause before spiraling into shame. It reminds you that even in adversity, you still have dignity. And dignity is a powerful ally. This practice doesn't happen overnight. It requires daily awareness. Begin by catching the negative phrases. Write them down. Question their truth. Then reframe them with words that are grounded, truthful, and compassionate. For example, turn, "I'll never get this right," into, "This is hard, and it's okay to need time." Over weeks and months, you'll start to notice a shift, not just in how you think, but in how you feel and act. The mind is always talking. The question is, are you listening passively, or are you participating in the dialogue? Stoicism teaches us that we are not at the mercy of our thoughts. We are their editors. And when we edit with wisdom, patience, and care, we give ourselves a mental environment in which resilience and clarity can thrive. Reflection. The voice you hear most in life is your own. Make it a voice that lifts you, not one that tears you down. Choose words that create calm rather than chaos. Speak to yourself with the same warmth you'd give to someone you love. When your inner world is peaceful, the outside world becomes easier to face. Every time you catch yourself being cruel in thought, pause and start again. Rebuild the dialogue. Word by word, you are shaping the mind you live in. Learning to control your emotions isn't about becoming immune to pain or irritation. It's about training your mind to respond with wisdom instead of reflex. The Stoics believed that every emotional surge is an opportunity to pause, to reflect, and to act in alignment with your values. These 10 habits are not instant fixes, but quiet rituals that build resilience from the inside out. You don't have to shout to prove strength. You don't have to react to every provocation. The calmest person in the room often holds the most power, not because they suppress emotion, but because they understand it. With practice, you can become that person. Stoic in spirit, steady in heart, and quietly in control of the most chaotic battlefield there is, your own mind.